What's good, party people? This is According to Woods, and I have the honor and privilege of having the one, the only. He's a mixed martial artist, a musician, and yes, a pro wrestler. He's the one and only John Parker. John, how you doing, my man?
Oh, good, man. How's it going on your end?
Great, great. Better to have you here because we kind of talked a little bit, chatted a bit offline. We have a lot of similar interests, so I think we're gonna get into all of it, all of it.
Let's do it, brother. Let's do it.
So obviously, okay. So, you're. I usually go off with like, how'd you start fighting? But I mean, combat sports. And I consider professional wrestling there too, especially with what you're seeing in Josh Barnett's Bloodsport and now Raw Underground. And I mean, what King of Pancrase and all of those Japanese promotions were. Those are professional wrestling promotions that did shoot fighting, right? So how did
Oh,
you
yeah.
all facets of combat sports?
Well, it's weird because, like, see, with the pro wrestling, I have a good friend. His name's Ryan Michaels Colson. And he has this organization where all the proceeds go to children with cancer. So we basically, what you do is you do the whole event and all proceeds, and we bring them into the ring, and they get to hang out with us and all this good stuff. And like I got it because I went to high school with him, so we were connected anyways. Now my martial arts come from running a pub for 10 years. I started as high school boxing a little and doing minor karate stuff, and then I got into jujitsu um, towards about year two of running the pub because I was getting beat up quite a bit. So and then I got into it hard because I'm a fan of Eddie Bravo, and I follow 10th Planet Jiu Jitsu, and I got his books and everything is my jam. So and so then I got into it, and I had a bouncer that worked for me while I was running the pub, and he got into mixed martial arts, and then next thing I know, I'm in mixed martial arts as well. So
Well,
that's
I think it's amazing that you have the involvement of one Eddie Bravo, because earlier today I had Donna Gonzalez, who's kind of this right hand woman in terms of setting up all the 10 Planet parties, and one of the first females to ever train under Eddie. So it's kind of cool. Again, our
right.
community is such. I mean, it's big when you look at the location and the logistics of it, but we're really small, right? I mean, you can
Well,
figure out one or two people, and
well,
generally that at least one of those people are Everett Osmer, and Everett Osmer will connect us all together, right?
he seems to be the guy. I gotta give him a shout out. Thanks for hooking us up on this one, man. Everett's he's a good guy, man. He's working hard for the people, I'd say.
No, he's incredible. He's I mean, what over the course of the last couple of years, he's been one of my closest friends, and we rap. And it's funny, I've known him probably about. I think he messaged me when Chris Cyborg fought her first fight in the UFC prior to her title win, her 145-pound title win, and he hits me up and he's like, "Oh, I really like what you're doing," and I was like, "Oh, whoa, like
I'll
that's cool, right?" And then over the
I'll tell you, he's loyal. He's a loyal guy, man. Once you got a friend in him, you got a friend for life, and that ain't no joke right there. I've known him for quite some time, and I've never been to his home state or town, but for a guy I met on Facebook through friends and other friends, wicked great guy. So
yes,
true to that. So
yeah, salute to Everett Osmer. Shout out to you, good sir. And again,
right.
I mean, I hope you're doing well in Alabama, because there was a bunch of COVID positive tests across all three campuses of the University of Alabama. So we hope that you're well. He actually just messaged me and said he's been having headaches after he
Oh
uh, about the strep. So we're just sending all positive stuff.
yeah, positive all the way, brother. Let's hope everything goes good. I mean, because right now this is hit or miss. Nobody knows what's going on with this COVID stuff right now, and eh, precautions need to be taken. I mean, so let's everybody play it safe. I don't want my boy Everett hurt. God
Yeah,
bless him.
No, you're 100% right. And in terms of like I've seen people with like no pre-existing condition and healthy and whatever, and they get it and they kick it. And then I've seen the same kind of segment of people that have gotten it and not done so well, right? And then people
Well, I mean, it does attack people with low immune systems. I mean, so anybody that's got that is going to have a rough time anyway they play the game. So, I mean, that's why I say everybody just use common sense. At least make sure you wash your hands, try not to cough on people. Let's, best you can do, anyways. So, wear the mask when they tell you to wear the mask and so on and so forth. Because I mean, that's all we can do. I mean, nobody really knows what's going on. So, I mean, I
yeah,
don't know.
right.
And I,
I mean,
and
it's just better to be safe than sorry. I mean, and at the very most, or at the very least, hey, it gives us an excuse to wear luchador masks. So I've got my El Santo mask on deck. So let's do this.
I've been waiting to do that. Actually, my son's got one too. It's a Spider-Man half Rey Mysterio, and I thought about whipping that out. I hear you. I hear you. Dude. Now, where
Oh,
are
I
you
love
at
it.
right now? Where do you live? Where are you located? What city?
Pardon?
Where are you at? What city?
Oh, I'm in LA. I'm in Los
Okay.
Angeles. Yeah,
So
yeah.
everything's cool out that way, though, right? Weather's good. And,
I mean, everything is crazy, man. I mean, we've got riots. I mean, it's so funny, right? Because I think in Long Beach, right, on the Queen Mary, I had attended a all-female jiu-jitsu competition, submission on the
yeah.
shore, and they're actually having one September 11th. So check out that on submission on the shore on all of their social media. But it's a great deal, right? And that was literally a week before COVID, and everybody's, jiu-jitsu community, everybody's
Yeah.
laughing. You've got, it's a cash jiu-jitsu tournament, that's being streamed live, over the pay-per-view and everything like that. And literally the next week, everything. There's no jujitsu. There's no
Nothing.
gyms are closed like a week like that. It's nuts.
It's crazy, like I say. I mean, and it's sad because some of these guys, like, I mean, I roll with guys. Jiu-jitsu is life. Like, I mean, like how they're coping with themselves right now is beyond me. I mean, I'm having my own issues, but my point still states is that when you roll every day and that's what you do, it's kind of hard not to roll every day. And I mean, so I know some of them guys must be hurting right now. I mean, the guy I trained with in Brewer, Eduardo Benjamin, the guy's a ninja, but I can't imagine how he's dealing with himself right now because that's what he does. He rolls, he rolls, he rolls. I mean, and that's the great thing though. It's a tight community. People, I mean, once you're in the group, man, you got some brothers and sisters for that matter. So
Yeah, brothers and sisters enroll, and that's one of the things that's kind of crazy because I mean, you can strike, kickboxing, boxing, whatever, on the bag. You can even, if you practice Filipino Kali, you can hit sticks, right, on the
right,
bag
right.
and everything. But jujitsu, you have to be close quarters, right? There's no
There's
ifs, ands, or buts about it. You can do all the
yeah,
drilling you want, but it only goes so far.
there's no
Actually,
other
going
way.
back to rolling.
I mean, you can't choke somebody out if you don't touch them. I mean, I hate to say it, but that's just common sense. You can't snap an arm if you can't grab it. So, I mean, there's going to be physical contact. And you can't lube yourself up with sanitizer. So, I don't know what to tell you.
Although there are those, what is it? What is it? The dumbass martial arts, whatever, with the one punch from whatever and send
Yeah,
guys going across the room. I mean, that is obviously not jujitsu. I don't know what the hell
no.
it is. Some sort of Jedi mind tricks, mysticism, whatever.
I've
But
seen some wild stuff on there, yeah. Like some really wild stuff. Like I can't remember. I think it's a Russian video, and the guy is just doing all this weird and it's not Jeet Kune Do. It's not anything. This is like I don't even know. I can't even explain it. And everybody has a crack at it, and everybody makes fun of it anyways. So I mean, it's just funny. Some of the things that people through time have tried and thought were legit martial arts too. I mean, think about the people that paid money for this stuff and spent years crafting this mysterious art of, well, I don't know what it is, but
No, I agree. And I don't know if it's like who's smarter, right? Is it the guy who's kind of convinced everyone that hey, this is it, right? Or the people that were like hook, line, and sinker, like
all the way. I mean, what lesson did you get? Right, what lesson did you get to when you finally went, no, no, this is not legit, dude. I mean, how many payments did you pay? And it gets scary at times, but that's the thing I love about jujitsu. When you go do jujitsu, you are learning something every single time, and it's not some fake ass shit. It's the
No,
real deal. Everything is applicable. Everything is usable. Now, I don't suggest getting on your back on a tar pavement, or something like that. That's probably not a wise idea. So don't pull guard. But I mean, stand up chokes. I mean, I've seen it. Arm bars. I mean, all this stuff does play into it. So I mean, once again, don't pull up on the ground trying to omoplata the guy because it's just probably not going to work. But there are definitely, because I mean, if you incorporate, let's say, judo in with some of this, then you got the tosses, which Rick Hahn, he's really good at this stuff, capitalizing on the flips and and then submitting you right off the flip. I mean, so there's different things you can add to it, like wrestlers, they can get you down, and then you can, if you're in top position, then you can make great moves. You know what I mean? So that you can do on the tar. So it works. I don't say it's right for every occasion, obviously, but I mean, at some point, avoidance or a decent striking game might help.
no,
So,
I agree 100%, 100%. And oh, Craig Claiborne, who's a very talented bass player, he says
oh,
rock on.
nice. Yeah,
Bam! Shout out musician to musician, John, and our friend Everett Richard Osmer. Thank you
there
for
he
coming
is.
in. Yes, Big John. There it
Kudos,
is.
brother.
And
Rock
shout
and
out to
roll.
you, Everett, and I hope you're doing all right. We're just sending positivity your way. Yeah, man, nothing but love for you here at Supporting the Woods. But yeah, so I mean, you're pretty versed in a lot of different things, right? We're talking mixed martial arts, we're talking jujitsu, talking striking, we're talking pro wrestling, we're talking music. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, you're one who has, instead of just going like, oh, I like one thing or I like a lot of things and I'm gonna try one, you've dabbled in and out of all of it and had like crazy success. I mean, off air, I mean, when you talk about the pro wrestling sphere, none other than the genius Lanny Poffo, Leaping
Yeah.
Lanny, you got to meet and work on a show with, which I think is
Yep.
amazing because if not for Randy Savage, Bret Hart, uh, Saturday Night's Main Event in 1987, I don't think I would have ever known or heard about anything combat sports because after that, after seeing WWF, and I was like, oh, that's a ring, right? So when I later saw like Julio Cesar Chavez Sr. or Mike Tyson or Tommy the Hitman
Oh
Hearns,
yeah.
I was like, oh, that's a ring, that's a ring, that's a ring. And then Dan Severn coming to WWF and literally ragdolling Owen Hart. I mean, the youngest
Yeah. I mean,
family, right? And he came in with like three belts that weren't WWF belts, and I was just like, wow, Vince allowed this? Like, what are we
that's
doing? You
now see
know?
what a lot of people don't realize either. Versus now, okay, a lot of us are aware pro wrestling has got a level of entertainment and entertainment alone. Okay, but in our day or earlier in time, you didn't really know that. I mean, they sold it really well because the cameras weren't as close. You're seeing it from like 3 rows back, stuff like that. So for a long time, the stigma with pro wrestling was, which it is very real if you do it, believe me, because it's just not the same. Like, yeah, you punch somebody, it's a feint, but when they slam you, it hurts. When they clothesline you, it hurts. When they hit you with a chair, it hurts. When all this stuff happens, when you fly out the ring over the top rope onto concrete, that hurts. Okay, so that factor is very real. But the punches, yeah, okay, maybe they not all crazy, but a lot of guys are very adamant on getting hit though. They want you to hit them as hard as you can, like to the chest or to the legs, because they want to sell it as well. So, it's a little but earlier in time, yeah. So when Dan Severn, for instance, come into the WWE or F or whatever letter we're calling it,
Yeah.
um, it was a lot more realistic and a lot more well, it was a lot larger is what it was on a because everybody's like, wow, that guy's really going to come in, or vice versa. What's that wrestler going to do to him because he's not a wrestler, and that. So it was a lot. It was a lot more interesting, I think, than say
No,
it happening now. Like Ronda Rousey and everybody's doing it.
yeah. Well, it's funny because, like, I mean, I'm a guy who, in my head, if I get a free moment to myself, I'm like, what would it look like if Eddie Bravo went up against, let's say, George Hackenschmidt, EBI rules, right?
Right.
And kind of like, and we already saw with like the war, Josh Barnett against Dean Lister and that
Yep.
was match versus no-gi jiu-jitsu at Metamoris, for the heavyweight Metamoris
Right.
title. And, when people think about that, I'm all like, okay, well, yes, it's awesome that there's, paid players like, Gordon and Nikki Ryan and all of the Donna here Death Squad guys, AJ Argazam, and all of these people that are making their money from jiu-jitsu. But the thing about it is, again, George Hackenschmidt and Frank Gotch were professional wrestlers that made their living grappling each other 1 hour Broadways, right, at the turn of the century. So paid submission grappling, at least in this country, is just as old as boxing, right? People
Oh
used
yeah.
to, yeah, people used to turn on the radio to hear, Ed Strangler Lewis put holds on people and whatever, just like, boxers and, Max Schmeling, Joe Louis, and all that jazz, right? But wrestling took a different turn, obviously, with the Goldust Trio and
Right.
that thing, and they were like, well, instead of drawing one house, we're gonna draw like three. You win one day, I'll win the next, and then we'll have the
Right.
legit shoot fight, and whoever wins. But we drew three different gates, and then from there, that's essentially how we got. The current day sports entertainment wrestling. And funny enough, because Toots Mondt of the Goldust Trio, right,
Right.
was right hand man of Vince McMahon Sr. So of course, he's a legit shooter, right? And
Right.
he was a policeman to make sure that nobody touched, Ed Strangler Lewis. So it's just fun stuff. That it's cousins, right? It's kind of the same, but kind of different, but they're cousins.
Well, you got to think. I mean, when you're grappling, I assume you grapple regularly, or at least have, and you understand what I'm talking about. When you grapple, it's almost like a chess match slash dance. Anyways, you got to. I mean, there's times where you got to read the opponent by their body language, maybe not as much as what they're saying, but still, nonetheless. I mean, they all do. I mean, well, think about it. All right, the figure four lock, great example. One come from the other. Which one was the chicken and which one was the egg? Because that figure four lock is used in jiu-jitsu all the time for a lot of things. So, I mean, just think about something that simple. So they obviously married at some point. So,
No, I agree 100%, which I really have to ask you. I want to know because I know how I feel, and I kind of talked last week with Barnett about it. But obviously, WWE Raw introduced a new concept called Raw Underground. I don't know if you've
right.
gotten a chance to check it out, but it looks like
No,
a glossy version of Josh Barnett's Bloodsport, right? Like,
interesting
yes,
concept.
yes. Oh, do you know about Barnett's Bloodsport?
I have not checked that out. I got to admit
Yeah.
that.
So, they just announced Sunday, October 11th. Um, because they were supposed to run like WrestleMania weekend, and obviously with COVID, that's
Right.
not happening. So October 11th in, I believe, the Indiana State Fairgrounds in Indianapolis, they are doing like six different shows, like Joey Janela Spring Break, blah blah blah. Everything under the GCW banner are basically doing
Really?
a 1 day of shows just there, and Bloodsport is one of them, right? So what Bloodsport is again, if you take submission grappling, right, and with the
Right.
like EBI, the combat jiu-jitsu open hand slaps, right, take it one
Right.
step further, right? So basically, what you would see in UWF, right, the kind of the work shoot style, the
Yep.
you
Yep.
know, in terms of the finishes may be predetermined, but how you get there, that's all you're calling it in the ring, brother, right? And there's no
Right.
ropes, so there's essentially like no ropes, just the ring posts, right? And
Yeah. Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
just grappling. You're just grappling.
Sounds
So
interesting.
oh, it's my favorite type of wrestling right now. I mean, other than like New Japan, and I'm not saying that because I'm one of the cool kids that like New Japan. I actually didn't like New Japan at first. I think the English commentary with Kevin Kelly that helps a huge bit. But again, like Bloodsport is like my favorite type because you have the pro wrestling aspect of it, but then there's some like legit shooters. I mean, the first incarnation of Bloodsport, well, it was the brainchild of none other than Matt Riddle, former
Oh
UFC.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
I got him.
so,
I'm a friend with him on Facebook. Yeah, I know him.
yeah.
Yeah, he's an animal, by the way. I mean, the guy is a hard-working dude, man, and I've known him right from his transition over from UFC over, and you know he's making a heck of a career right now. I
yeah,
mean, he's already bursting on the scene, but he's really about ready to go from here to here, like overnight again. But yeah, no, big fan of Matt, man.
yeah. So and it's kind of crazy the way that his rise has become because obviously, you know, he was almost like a precursor to like Connor and what would become after in terms of Dana White's kind of golden goose, and then he fell out of favor once he got like the drug test, and even WWE they didn't touch him for 2 years. They were like, figure yourself out, and his kind of extracurricular activities. He changed the wellness policy where you can actually have like a little bit of the
Right.
medicine and maybe a couple psychedelics.
Well,
With,
now with the cannabis laws all changing, I mean, it's made it really hard. I know when we did Dana White's Looking for a Fight in Bangor, Maine,
yeah,
um, they tested, I believe, a bunch of guys for it at the time. But now that it's all switched over in different states, it's getting harder for it to be even an issue. You know what I mean? Like I don't even know as though they even think about it. But when I first started, it was a big issue. Guys were getting tested all the time. You know what I mean? So, but now it's kind of just like, unless maybe you got some ridiculous high level of, THC in your system or something. But they don't, as far as I know, they're not hitting it as hard as they used to. So, because it's legal everywhere, it's like drinking, you know what I mean? Yeah, you can't be drunk going in there, at least you shouldn't, but
right.
that's happened too, I'm sure. So,
Oh, it has. Oh, it has. And I mean, you of all people could probably tell the story. I've seen some native, casino shows off, on the reservation shows where I mean, some promotions will actually just pluck dudes over the crowd and like, hey, we'll pay for your beer money. This guy, his fight dropped out, but if you step in, we'll give you a case of beer. And I've,
oh, wow.
you know,
Yeah, that'd be wild. Jeez. But nah, I ain't seen much of that. I guess God bless it. So, because I have, it's a serious business. I mean, people can get hurt. I mean, and it's really that's why I don't suggest anybody drink anyways. Because I tell you, it's the longest. Like, let's say you're in there for a minute. That's the longest minute of your life. It really is like the time don't move, but you're still moving. You're still exhausting. You're taking energy. And it's like to get to a certain time. It talks about the training, your workout ethic to get to this, the fight camp and everything. Because a lot of guys that are say amateurs, they're doing this for free. They get there. So the only money they got to even do, like say, get massages or go to their workout camps or any of that is through sponsors if they can even find them. So I mean, so it's tough for the amateur guy to do this, but yeah, you're getting beat up a lot. So it's not really something you want to be drunk doing? I mean, because you're going to wake up in the wrong hospital and not know how to get home. So I
No,
don't suggest that.
yeah, no, not at all. But I mean, when you talk about like, cannabis and CBD, especially, in the legalization of it, talk about like a game changer in a lot of not just fighters, but just, people's lives, right? The fact, obviously, that age old excuse like, oh, I can smoke because I've got glaucoma, but finding out
Right.
all of these things, they do work, right? And, you
Yeah.
know,
Well, that's it. I mean, you got to think the over the counter medications you'd have to take. Say you fought, all right, and this is what it's done for fighters in my eye, is that when you had to have medications, a lot of times as an amateur, you're not getting compensated with money at all. So you ain't got no money for medications or any of this stuff. Well, CBD seems to be at least an 80% painkiller that really does help your body in a lot of ways, whether it's the rubs or the oils or preventing cancer or whatever it does. Um, so I think it's really good because these guys ain't fighting in the streets to get their money to say go get the pills or whatever they need. And now this is over the counter. It's more normalized now. So I think a lot of these fighters find relief in it because I mean I got aches and pains from past fights that I mean I had my nose go this way and that way and this way and that way. Well, it does get sore after time, you know what I mean? So I can attest to the pain don't stop just because the event stops. When it's over, I mean, Chuck Liddell's probably still feeling stuff from, the 80s or whatever. So it's a tough sport to get into, but if you love it, then you just love it. And it's hard to even get away from sometimes. You know what I mean? Maybe you should, maybe you shouldn't, but it's hard.
No, 100%. And I mean, I love that you mentioned the Chuck Liddell aspect of it because I mean, I covered the weigh-ins for Tito Chuck 3, and I mean, Tito looked like $1 million, like legitimately. Like he could, I mean, just physically, he looked the best, and he's always had an acrimonious relationship with the press and everything like that. No, not that day. Like we were rapping, talking to him. It was the most free. Then Chuck walks in, and it just, oh, it didn't look well. Like obviously, he walks with a limp anyway, but
Right,
he looked frail. He looked fit, but he looked frail. If that makes
right.
sense, you know.
No, and I remember Dana White saying that if I remember correctly, or somebody commented on it anyways, that he shouldn't go back and fight again anyway. But it still happened some way somehow. So I mean, maybe it wasn't Dana. I can't exactly remember, but somebody did mention that it's not a good idea, and it's not because you can't still whoop some ass. It's just that you're talking about a high level, and Tito was in shape that day. Okay, so I mean, you got to remember that. And kind of redemption, I mean, kind of happy for Tito in a way a little bit, but not really. I'm a Chuck Liddell guy, so. But I get it. It's your comeback. You've earned it. Certain things, maybe I don't know. That's cool though. But I did like Chuck. Chuck was cool, man. It's just a shame to see your heroes get old. You know.
No, 100%. And I mean, the thing that was, I don't want to say sad or disappointing because I would never use that because if not for Chuck and Tito, my goodness, like we none of us would be here. Like they're one of the
Well,
forerunners, right?
well, you got to think. I mean, when UFC started in general, it was so confused to begin with pro wrestling actually that people who were like, it's kind of boring compared to pro wrestling. I mean, that was all the lights, the glamour, the glitter. Everybody like, yeah, let's do that. So it was tough for the beginning of UFC because a lot of jujitsu began there, and a lot of people didn't know how to wrap their heads around that because they find grappling and sometimes a little slower pace and etc. So in the first round, I mean, but they did all revolutionize. It's just like LeBron James, or every era you get a Michael Jordan, you get a Kobe, you get a Larry Bird. The torch will be passed, and the same goes for any of them. I mean, they all did their part to make it huge. I mean, the same could be said about BJ Penn in my eyes. The same could
Yep.
be said about Randy Couture.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a bunch of big guys that really made this all happen, and bigger guys than I'm even talking. Even Brock Lesnar, oddly enough, had a piece
Yeah.
in this puzzle. So
Yeah.
I mean, and so, but to get where they are now that trickle down effect though comes down to us little guys because you gotta. Where I live in the town I live in is a small fishing village right now. There's no like we got one store. There's a couple things, grocery stores. It's not very big. So where I come from, it's MMA was a tough sell. Like there ain't like 20 dudes around my house that are trained in MMA, and there's a big gym down the road, and we do it Rocky style up in these woods. Okay, you're carrying logs, you're working on a wharf, you're doing, running in the snow. It's crazy stuff. So I mean, it's a little weird up here. I mean, it's not the same as other places.
No, not the same at all. I couldn't agree with you more. But I'm going to bring up DJ chiming in over on YouTube. Said, "This is straight fire, enjoying the stream. Thank you, DJ. You're the man. Appreciate it." And then
Right, right.
Everett has two questions. And I think one relates, and then we'll get to the latter. But
Yep.
we'll answer the second question first. And he
All right.
asked, how did Big John get involved in MMA?
All right. Well, like I said, I touched on it a little earlier. It started basically, I mean, I had cousins, and like I said, we did minor karate, we did boxing when it come around. Because like around here, we don't have a boxing program, so it's like we had like 4 years of high school that they actually had boxing, so we all got into it and did it, and blah blah blah, and so forth. So that's how like the bug started. But later in life, I ran a pub for quite a while, like I said, about 10 years, and a lot of fights, a lot of this. I mean, I could tell stories all day on just bar fights that went out of control. But after a while, you get thrown through a gumball machine just so many times that you have to figure out how to, throwing punches ain't selling, it's not working. So then I started getting into Eddie Bravo really heavy. I trained with Young's MMA in Brewer, Maine, and they were Baja Gracie. Um, Basically, that's it. That's where it started. And then, of course, we started doing more boxing. We started doing more kickboxing. We started doing more grappling, and so on and so forth. And cross training with other guys. I mean, I've cross trained with Bellator fighters. I mean, I've cross trained with UFC and Marcus Davis. So I mean, and then that's where it went. And it's not like I'm saying that like I trained with them every single day of the week either, okay? Because like here, you got to travel 2.5 hours to go train with a guy. You see what I'm saying? So unless you got your crew in town, therefore, so it's a little more difficult to be like 6 days a week with Marcus Davis. But I have trained with some big dudes, cross trained with a lot of guys. Bare knuckle boxer Chris Sarro. He's a big name coming up right now. A lot of people are going to be talking about him soon. He's undefeated right now. His last two knockouts were just. Check him out if you get a chance. Check out Chris Sarro bare knuckle bare knuckle fighting championship. Oh, it's just whoa, give you cold chills.
That is amazing. And I mean, shout out to Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship because I mean, it's giving a lot of people, a second wind in the sport. One of I consider a friend is Chris Lieben, right? And when people were like, "Oh, Chris Lieben is like too old to fight," whatever, you got to remember, Chris Lieben is coaching every day, right?
Right,
He's
right,
a coach. Yeah, I mean, down there in San Diego, he's reffing fights on the amateur scene here in California. Like, he is somebody who has given his entire life to the sport, right? And who are we to say like, oh, you don't belong here or whatever? Because again, even that, right? You don't have to ref. And the funny part about it is like you can almost tell. I guess the fighters like entry point to MMA is because I've seen amateur fighters like when he makes a call or whatever try to get in Lieben's face, and I'm all like, oh
right,
my god, I'd rather like play in on the 405 freeway. I'd rather
right.
buy
In front of a big train. I mean, what do you got? I mean, because Well, a wise thing says if you see a cauliflower ear, you might want to turn around and not even open your mouth. But
Yeah,
is neither here nor there. These old dogs, these young dogs, don't realize that they don't go to sleep. They don't die. They didn't stop doing this stuff. I know a guy. He's from Maine. I believe his name is Gary Carr. He fights for New England Fights, and he's like 54 years old, and he's fighting still. Like he's an amateur. Don't get me wrong. I don't believe he's going pro or nothing, but he's like undefeated. I think he's like 3-0, 4-0, something like that. So don't think these old boys still can't whoop some ass, and don't think they went anywhere because they're still there, man, and they still know how to do all this stuff. You don't forget it. It's definitely like riding a bike. You'll be right back on, you know. So
yeah,
I mean, even if they don't do it like they used to, I mean, some guys do, stop after, I mean, the grueling 6 days a week, 7 days a week, whatever, maybe do it 1 or 2 days or once a month. But they didn't forget the stuff, I mean, they can, if you think Chuck Liddell can't take your head off your shoulders, let me tell you something right now, Jack. He'll take it and he'll put it right up there with the other ones, okay?
yep.
So that's a fact, okay?
Those are straight facts, you know. I think Dan Severn just barely retired last week or something like that. That dude is like 100. He's got like 100 wins in MMA. Like what in the hell?
And there's a forefather right there that's done a lot in both aspects of pro wrestling and fighting. So I mean, well, Tank Abbott was another one. He did the same. So and then you think about, let's say, like Kimbo Slice. Okay, he wasn't a wrestler, but he come from the streets doing the bare knuckle thing before the bare knuckle thing was even a good idea. And so then he comes to MMA and has mixed reviews. Then he goes back to boxing, starts whooping, and then the inevitable, happened. And God rest him, I mean, but what a specimen! I watched a bunch of his old bare knuckle fights just in parking lots. You know what I mean? That was a skit. That guy gives you nightmares. Okay, if he didn't, something wrong with you. Okay, because nobody wants to meet up with Kimbo Slice anywhere for anything. Joe Rogan says it best. He said it about Brock Lesnar, and I feel the same about Kimbo Slice. He says, "I'm not worried as much about Brock Lesnar killing me, or in this case, Kimbo Slice killing me." He says, "I'm more worried about him jumping up here and using me as a condom to screw something else way bigger than me." So that's the way it's like, yeah, no, these guys are beasts. I mean, think about it. You don't realize how mean and big they really are until you like stand there going, sweet Lord. Because we got a guy like in New England Fights. His name is Ross Hilton. He's fighting for Bellator right now. He just come off on a decision win like last month, I believe. The guy is so tall. I mean, it's like to see him in real life. It's like looking at the Undertaker or something. You're going, if he gets a hold of you, you're dead. It don't even matter. What are you gonna do? I mean, you can't even rip his arm off. I mean, there's nothing you can do. If you try to armbar him, you're like halfway, like up his forearm. You're not even near the elbow anywhere. There's nothing you can do. What can you do with a guy that big? So, a lot of people need to be careful when they see these guys on the streets because they might be able to snap you like a twig.
No, 100%. So I mean, it's funny. I just happened to pull up Dan Severn's MMA record. 127 fights, 101 wins, 19 losses, and 7 draws. 101 wins, folks.
Think
Oh my
about that.
goodness.
That's like unheard of. I mean, nowadays the guys that do this pad their record. I mean, I tested the basketball. Okay, it's like Larry Bird versus, let's say, LeBron nowadays. Back
Yeah.
then, there was elbows thrown. Okay, people
Yeah.
clothesline people. Okay, now how can
Yes.
we compare that to what they're doing nowadays? Where like every single move they're getting a foul call or something. The same goes like in the fight world. Back then, they could stomp your skull and crush it. They could literally jump on that like it was nothing. Now, if you hit behind the ear in the wrong spot, point deducted. So when you look at these old boys, you got to take that into granted. If he's got 100 wins, that means he went against 100 alpha wolves. Okay, every time, every
Yeah.
time. There was no pad in that thing. You didn't get to pick some guy with an 0-3 record. You got the dude of dudes, man, and he's coming to kill every day, sometimes 3 times a day. You know, think about some of the things Horace Gracie did, where they were fighting. What was it, 2, 3 times in a night for a tournament?
Right.
I mean, it's crazy to think about.
Yeah, you know, and to your, you know, your credit, what you were talking about, you know, like why would anybody test them? One of the goofiest the stories that I have is coming out of UFC 199, right? And that was a big thing for me because like that was at the Forum, right? I
Right,
went to Inglewood High. I had my high school graduation ceremony right there in at the Forum, right? And you know, when I was going to high school, and you know, there was UFC about or NHB, no holds barred. That would it wasn't even legal in California, let alone
right,
here we go. The premier organization having a title fight, a world middleweight title fight between Michael Bisping and Luke Rockhold, right? And you know, this is after Bisping knocks out Rockhold and everything. And what ends up happening, I was still a fanboy then. I hadn't got on this side of it, and I see at the tunnel Matt Hughes and Robbie Lawler walking together, just shooting the shit. And I'm like,
right,
this is the past and present of the middleweight division to one Hall of Famer, one first ballot Hall of Famer, you know, and at the time, Lawler was the champion, right? And I was
right.
just like, oh, cool. Insert two drunkards. Hey, you want to take a picture? And literally, like, almost bulldog choking Matt Hughes. And this is pre Matt Hughes getting hit by a train and surviving. This is
Right,
Matt
right.
Hughes.
You might
Yeah.
die.
Yeah. And
I
I'm
mean,
just like, again, I would rather set my shorts on fire and run across the 405 than to try to do anything to Robbie Lawler and Matt Hughes for a picture, for a selfie. Um, but I was just like, and but they were cool, and it's one of those where like you know the hell that you can unleash, and that makes you a centered cheat type person, you know, like. But I was just like, this is stupid, and funny enough, I got my selfie, but I didn't have to, you know, bulldog choke anyone. So there you go.
fair enough. Well, yeah, I suggest not going that route. I mean, it don't end well. I remember my first fanboy moment though. It was my
Let's
first
see
fight actually, and I had my dad as my corner guy, and he didn't know nothing about like he's a Vietnam vet. He knows about fighting, he knows about boxing, he knows about pro wrestling, but he had no idea about like cage fighting, none of this stuff. So I take him and I sign him up as my corner because I had an extra corner, so he was going to be my guy. So I take him and he's sitting front row and he has no idea what he's doing. Like he has no idea what is going on. He's never seen none of this, right? So, anyways, we're in the locker room and we're sitting like right here, and over here is Marcus Davis taping up his guy's hands to get ready to go fight. Right? I mean, I'm like right there, like right there, and he was like either the first or second fight his guy, and I was like the third or fourth fight, and so. We're sitting there, and my dad has no idea who he is, not even a clue, dude. Like that could be the beer guy, you know what I mean? He has no idea. And I'm sitting there and I'm going, oh my God, because I had met him before because I trained with him a little. But at the time, I didn't like spend time with the guy. You know what I mean? Now we're spending time. Like we're like rapping. His hands are getting wrapped. People are talking. Things are happening. I'm trying to watch him. But Dad's sitting there like, you know, he has no clue. And I explained to him after Marcus's guy goes out, and I look at him. I said, "You know who that was?" And he's like, "I don't know who anybody is." And I explained it to him. Well, at the time, he says to me, "Oh yeah, whatever, whatever." And so we go do our thing, and I come back, and the fights are over, and we go home, and I get a phone call a week later because I'm like in awe. I mean, this is Marcus Davis. I've seen him on video games. I've
yeah.
seen him on TV. I mean, he used to box all around New England. So I mean, he's a well-known name. So I'm like fanboying right out, and my old man calls me, like I said, a week later, and he's like, "Oh my God, I checked out who that guy was." He's like, "That's crazy. I can't believe I was sitting right beside him." He's like, "That's like the coolest thing in the world." And now all of a sudden, the time my dad thought was kind of turned out to be this great event for him, because now he's like, he didn't even know what was going on. And I remember him sitting cage side, because at this point he hasn't watched any fights either, because we've been backstage the whole time getting ready, because you usually have to be there right up to your fights, unless you're a big dog and then you can come in when you want. But usually you got to be like 5-10 fights ahead of schedule. So we were backstage the whole time. He still at this point has never watched one of these go down. So I'm the first one he ever watches go down. So we do it and we get done. He's like, "Wow," he says, "you're one crazy son of a bitch." And I said, but he's been a fan ever since now. So he loves it. He's a big fan of Dave Caveman Rickles. He loves him right to death. For that matter, my sponsors, Prime Athletics, which you've seen them on Here Comes the Boom, the movie. He hooked me up with Caveman. When my dad's a vet, he sent him an autographed Bellator glove from him and stuff. So Dad's always been a fan of it. So, but yeah, I want to give a shout out to Prime Athletics, man. They've been with me since I started, like actually in the cage, not in the bar. They're a great company, best gear company I can think of in the world, man. Sean's been wicked good to me. They did all my fight shorts, all my banners, all that stuff. So they're legit. So if anybody needs good gear, I suggest checking out Prime Athletics.
Yeah,
Strong stuff.
and not just that, but I mean, if you're sponsorship, man, like that is a crucial part of a fighter's, not just career but livelihood. When the UFC basically took out sponsors and made it centralized to Reebok, that changed the way. I mean, I think I heard on a Fighter and the Kid that Brennan Schaub, who wasn't a champion, but he had like in his car like six-figure checks, this
Right.
sponsorship. Like,
See, that's what
yeah,
I get why the UFC did it, okay? Because it benefits the UFC. Reebok gives UFC money, okay? So that makes great sense to them. But what it did is it screwed the little guy or the fighter, because, like you said, I mean, a lot of these guys, you don't realize it, because everybody thinks that Dana White's paying you hundreds of thousands of dollars because you see Conor McGregor getting it, and you see Brock Lesnar when he got it, and John Jones and them guys. Yeah, they're getting 6-7 figure, whatever, stupid contracts. But the little guy, I know UFC fighters that are only making like $2,000, $3,000 for the fight. Okay, now you get your incentives, you get your other stuff, but basically that's for the fight. You know what I mean? So without these sponsors that they took away from them, they're losing out on a lot of money, because that leaves Reebok to be the number one guy to take care of business. Now, if they decide, well, we're only going to give each fighter, let's say, $20,000, well, that's a long stretch from, let's say, $200,000. And like I said, anybody that thinks fighting is easy or cheap, they've lost their mind. Okay, it is a very expensive hobby at best. I mean, there's a handful of guys that make the stupid money, but a lot of times these guys are getting beat up for your pleasure. That's why a lot of times you see guys in the crowd, they're like, "Oh, kill him, he's a piece of," they're saying stuff that's pro wrestling stuff. And I get pro wrestling crowds saying this stuff. But if you're really against the guy in the cage, you got to realize both these dudes went through so much to get there, between medicals, pre-medicals, making sure you tests and MRIs and all this extra stuff. And now with COVID, I can't even imagine them driving that stupid Q-tip that's 24 inches long down your nose. So they do a lot of hard work, So when you take that sponsor money away, you're making it tough on them. And that's not fair to the fighter, because they deserve way more than what they're getting. Really, I mean, no offense, but if you put 3 months into something, $5,000 don't seem like a whole lot. Okay, it sounds okay, but $5,000 doesn't pay for the 3 months you were away from your family, or if that's how you do it. You know what I mean? Or the fact, even if you're training from home, you're still gone. I mean, you're out there doing cardio, you're out there lifting, you're out there rolling, so you can that's way more expensive to me. That's stuff you can't get back. So when people look at me and say, well, 5,000 ain't bad. Well, you know how much UFC made that night? All right. Do
Yeah,
the math. All right.
tens of
Especially when they
thousands.
were putting people in seats. Do the math. It's pretty simple. Even on a low scale level, like say regular just local shows, it's like 25, 55, $75 a ticket. Then it's 125 to $300 a ticket for up close VIP stuff. All right, that's just low. That's not UFC. That's not Bellator. They're getting stupid money. So think about that and how many seats are in that auditorium? Well, they have a mandatory amount that has to be there. Well, they're making money, you know what I mean? And I do think the fighters need to be compensated. I think nobody talks about it. Everybody avoids the subject, but I think they should start talking about it because soon you're going to start seeing the same thing as with football, concussions. The problem is that yeah, dude goes out and gets knocked out a couple times. All right, that's cool. Well, the fighter guy gets knocked out. Say he had a rough start. He had like 12 losing fights. Well, there was
Yeah.
probably 10 concussions in there. You know what I mean? That were guaranteed concussions. It wasn't like we questioned it was a concussion. He got knocked out. Little birdies, you know, tweeting over your head, that type of thing. So it's well, look at what happened. You know, poor Muhammad Ali. I mean, brain damage. It comes from getting hit. Now that a lot does come from boxing gloves. I mean, they say that blunt force trauma is similar to the helmet. So MMA gloves does lower that amount. You know what I mean? I think, as far as like your brain and etc. But as far as still getting knocked out, you get knocked out. You get knocked out. It don't matter what glove you get on. So that's something that I hope they do start getting a little more attention on because I mean these guys do basically sell their souls to play the game.
No, 100%. I mean, it's like Jack Johnson going down to the crossroads, like,
It really is. It is. For your few minutes of fame, you're putting a lot on the line. I know a lot of strong dudes, and I know that a lot of them wouldn't do it because they know that they might walk back with a broken arm. You could walk back with, like I said, knocked out. You could go in a coma. Anything's happened. I mean, it's not like it's guaranteed. I mean, that's what happens when you sign the paperwork. So
No, 100%. And, especially what we know about, trauma, especially as it relates to the brain, right? I mean, Billy Mays, right? Who, not the baseball player, but,
no,
the
no, I know it.
oxygen guy. Yeah.
Yeah, with a suitcase to the head or whatever it was, right?
And he
Yeah,
killed him.
right. Something as simple as that. Now, let's think about this, though. The guy that got whacked in the head a bunch of times, that might not have hurt him quite as bad either, because he built up a dome. You know what I mean? So it's hit or miss, but that's how quick it can happen, though. Because, I mean, everybody's like, oh, he got knocked out. That's awesome. Well, did you know that might be his last moment? That could have been the last moment. You know what I mean? Like, we don't know that until he wakes up. And then we still don't know that until he gets carted off and gets cleared. So I mean, as somebody that's been punched in the face like 21 times, I can tell you it's not a pleasant moment. You know what I mean? So when it goes down, it's a rough day at the office. So that's the other thing, having the weight of your family and everybody on your shoulders. It's not like a team sport where you can maybe share that a little bit. I mean, you do. I mean, you got your corners and trainers and stuff, but for the most part, you're on your own. So when you fail, there's a whole nother level of anxiety that's added to your problem, whether you are injured or whatever. Now you're sitting there holding an ice pack on your head going, oh my God, I just let everybody down. You know what I mean? Like, that's the losing side of it. Now picture putting 3 months into that as an amateur and you're not getting a penny anyways. So now you're sitting there, you've done all that stuff, you're holding the ice pack on your head and nothing. You know what I'm saying? So you gotta give everybody a shout out. Anybody that's crazy enough to step in the cage and go through the time it takes to do it, the medicals, the game plans, that person deserves your utmost respect, whether you like him or not. Because that's a lot of work, but nothing. Except for a little bit of fame, you know what I mean? But it
Yeah.
does feel good. It's adrenaline rush. I will agree to that.
No,
So
100%. And that's why you do it. And for me, I'm all like, if you guys are bringing the steak, I'm bringing the sizzle. So like whatever
right,
way that I can help kind of I guess, bolster the name, right? I mean, if you're going to do it anyway, I want to make sure that all of your guys is, I mean, pockets are lined with that gold, that dollar bill, because I mean, you guys more than deserve it. It's a crazy thing that we're still in 2020 with all of the innovations that man has done, and we're still kind of like, oh, but fighters aren't paid.
right? It's just crazy. It's just weird. But I tell you what, I mean, but whether it's been pro wrestling, whether it's been straight up jujitsu, grappling, or mixed martial arts, everybody seems to be a great community, though. I mean, no matter which one you get into, once you do and you've at least established yourself a little bit, they like you quite well. So, I mean, there is a little reward. It's not like it's all garbage because you do build family. I mean, a lot of these guys, you got to trust somebody that's you're training with, not to take your arm home with them. So there is stuff. I mean, a good training partner is hard to find that you can trust and get into. So
100%. And Everett is saying, thank you for all of the info, Big John. And I do concur because I've seen it happen. And most people that I mean, most fighters, they're like, "Oh man, I got into this war," and they'll show people on their phones and whatever. But again, if you look at like concussions or even trauma to any part of your body, like a pro wrestling bump card, you know there's only so many of those that you could take. So if
right,
you get into a 3 to 5 round war as an amateur, or a 3 to 5 round war in essentially a regional promotion, right?
right,
If you look at your body like a bump card, right? Well, let's say if you're one fight away from making the big show and the big money, right? Or one shot away from a title shot in a big promotion, right? And you
right.
excelled it that one last bump in the gym, kind of bobbleheading each other, or
I right.
getting into a war, you know?
I had this older. He's a samurai warrior. That's all I'll say. The guy told me, he says, you young guys need to realize that you don't need to kill yourselves in sparring. You need to work. You need to move. You need to do stuff. He says, but all them unnecessary hits could be the hit that gives you your chance. He says, as at some point they all add up, whether it's your buddy doing it or the other guy doing it. So you got to find the happy medium. Like, but there's so many facets of the game that I don't think like boxing, you don't have to get beat up all the time. You know what I mean? Like you do. I mean, you're gonna get your arm ripped off. You're gonna, you gotta go through the rigors, but there's a lot more to it. There's a lot more cardio involved. A lot more different positions. Wrestling takes a lot out of you. I mean, that'll suck your energy right out. So when you go to stand up to punch somebody, it's like you got Jello now and you have nothing. So getting yourself to transition from A to B, it gets pretty wild. So
No, 100%. And again, like you said, there's so many facets of the game, and it's just the utilization of it. If you're gonna go in terms of, yeah, I like Rogan because he has that, for many reasons, but he's got that supplement and brand on it, right? And they're the
right,
human optimization, kind of for, force, right? So if you look about optimizing your body and your skill set, you kind of have to go like, what is going to be the best for me in terms of the longevity, not just like, or it's even doing an interview, right? If you've got
right,
18 fights on the card in an amateur contest, and I stick a microphone in somebody's hat, and they go, I'm going to kill him. 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 All 18 times. Well, guess what? It loses its luster because
right. Well,
everybody's it.
think about when Tyson used to come out, the look he'd give, right? There was nothing scarier than that. That to me is like, that's freaky, okay? Like he didn't have to say, I'm gonna kill you, I'm gonna kill you, I'm gonna kill you. He come out and you knew he was gonna kill you. You didn't have to question that. It wasn't like it was even an option for you. You're going down. And anybody that thinks during his prime you weren't going down, let me tell you what, Jack, you're going down. So I mean, sometimes it's the guys that don't say stuff that scare me the most. You know what I mean? You can stand up there all day and run your mouth. That don't that shows me you're actually more scared than the other. You know, if guy walks up there, puts his hand behind his back like that, and looks you dead in the eye, you got a problem. It's about ready to. Well, you don't have a problem if you're ready, but you're gonna earn it. That it's not gonna be a walk in the park. You know, that guy means business. He ain't saying nothing. He ain't pushing nobody. He already knows why he's here. He spent 3 months of his life to kill you. He don't need to tell you that. You should already know that. It was on the paperwork.
No, 100%, 100%. And DJ, again, and thank you for chiming in. And if you haven't already done so, uh, consider hitting that subscribe button and the notification bell for all of this fascinating content at According to Woods. I'd appreciate it. But he's saying this is very interesting. He's a major fan of the NBA. He knows little of fighting, but it's fascinating and really cool, the insight that you're bringing, Big John. So shout out to
Go
DJ
go.
and shout out to one Big John for kind of sitting us down and t- telling us the knowledge tree, letting us sit under his tree of knowledge.
Well, that's see. After I fought a couple times, see up here, like I tell you, resources are slim. That's where Team Nightmare come from. Is originally that's why I tend to talk about it a lot. Is because when I switched gears a little bit and started making our own team, it wasn't because I wanted to be something. It's because I wanted to give these guys that were showing up to the show somebody that will help. There was dudes showing up with no hand wrap, nobody to wrap their hands. You know, they got a one guy and a case of beer in the back, like you said before. Like they were coming wicked unprepared, or they'd be running around trying to find this and that. And so that's why Team Nightmare come along, because a bunch of us fighters at the time needed somebody, you know, to be there to wrap your hands, to help stop the bleeding, to do this stuff. So I ended up being more of a corner man, cut man by necessity because nobody else was doing it. And I kind of felt bad watching them go through the same rigmarole I kind of went through. And it's like, well, somebody got to do something. You know what I mean? So now I talk about it and I try to help everybody that wants to listen because it's serious. It's not as much of a joke. I mean, it's when you watch it on TV, you know what I mean? It's real easy to sit there and go, well, I wrestled or I boxed or I did this. You didn't do that, okay? And I can attest to that because that's the way I thought. You know, like I did some minor little skirmishes in jujitsu. Like I said, I boxed, I dabbled and stuff. You can't dabble in this. This is a real thing. You know, these guys, like there's guys out there that this is their lives. You know what I mean? That's what they do. It's not a joke to them. So, you know, you got to be serious about it and be into it. So I try to at least give people knowledge, you know, because you don't want to go in there because once again, nobody's going to pay your bills when you get stonewalled cat shit. So it does help lessen the blow, you know what I mean? Having somebody at least saying, well, you know, you might want to do this or you might want to do that, or, you know, next time buy some bandages. I mean, you know, common sense stuff too. But so that's why I explain a lot of it, you know, because I had to do it myself. And
Yeah.
if there's anybody out there looking to get into it, watch some of this. It'll at least probably help you a little bit, you know. So
No, 100%. You know, and it's something you don't know unless you try it, right? And that's what. And I try to be totally aware, right? Because I mean, yes, I've done jujitsu here and there, but you know, never stepped into the cage, never competed at a IBJJF or MAGA or anything like that. So, I mean, before I criticize, I can't, I really don't have a leg to stand on because I haven't done it. You know, I've been close, but not.
well, it's like, do you remember not that long ago when Stephen A. Smith was doing commentary and he made the faux pas about saying something about it didn't work, or it was the wrong comment to make. Long story short, about either the work ethic or something,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
everybody pounced all over him for that because it's a serious thing to these guys. Okay, the second you question what they did, you stepped over the line, and not just like the fighter guy might be like, well, whatever, I don't care. He's, you know, I don't care about him anyways. But the community does because they know. They know that if you're in the UFC, you're there. You've done something in your existence to warrant, you know, So nobody should be questioning anything, let alone somebody that has never ever done it. Enjoy it, pick your favorite, cheer for them, but you can't sit there and be like, oh no, that dude didn't, whatever. He sucks, like no, you don't even know how much of his soul he sold to be there. You know what I mean? Especially if they have kids, they have who knows what. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a lot to it. You know what I mean? So, and I always like to at least let the fans know. If you're watching it, enjoy it. It's great. It's one of the oldest sports in the world. Okay,
Yeah.
really, wrestling, boxing, any of them. We've been punching people in the face for millions of years. I'm sure I'm over exaggerating, but you know what I'm saying. Uh, so, but you got to respect what they're doing because you can't a lot of times do what they. Even as somebody that I mean, I'm not the best in the world. Believe me, I'm not even close. So my point is, but I've been there. I've seen it. I've tasted it. I know what it's like to say, I'm not going to raise my hand and I got to go home lumped up. You know what I mean? It's not a fun feeling. For that matter, the picture on the wall right behind me is one of my last fights where I lost. I was on the front cover. And on that picture up there, it says, I autographed it to myself and I said, this is a reminder, never forget this day. Because right on the front cover, I'm getting smashed. I mean, this kid, if you can see the picture right now, he's like Chuck Liddell me from the top. Yeah, I'm on the ground, he's ground and pounding. But I did that because now it's like, if you ever forget that moment, you need to look at the picture because I remember it every second of it. You know what I'm saying? And that's what should drive you. But you got to remember, it's not a game. It's a sport. It's a real thing. It's not a game, and that proves it right there. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I keep it around. That way I always remember that it's not a game. It's a sport, but it's not a game.
Oh, no, 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 I agree. It's not a game, and again, I love when you mentioned earlier about like it's a glorified hobby at best, because sometimes when you look at the numbers and cents, it kind
Well,
of
that's it.
equates to be that.
Well, you got to think. I mean, I know I'm friends with a guy on Facebook who we also sponsored one time, I believe. His name's Devin Powell. He fights in the UFC. He had one of the worst eye pokes you've ever seen in your existence. It kicked him out the game for a while. Now think about this. This guy's having his moment in the sunshine, and something as stupid as an eye poke takes you out the game because obviously, and it don't just end there. You're like, oh, he poked his eye. Blink a couple times, you'll come out of it. No, no, no. You can check out pictures on Twitter, all of them of him. He was like weeks with his eye, like he couldn't even see out of his eye. You know what I mean? Like, and that had nothing to do with the fact that the guy kept fighting the guy and couldn't see out his eye. I mean, think about this stuff. You know what I mean? This is amazing stuff. I mean, can you imagine telling your grandchildren this? Yeah, no, I was in the world's biggest organization, got poked in the eye and still going one eye, that's pretty cool. So these guys are, it's hardcore, I guess, that's why I say you got to respect it. Always got to respect it.
No, 100%. And again, any man, woman, and child, because I mean, there's pancration fights with headgear, where, and it's just like anybody that steps on that mat, whether it be a wrestling mat, pro wrestling mat, a jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, whatever, it's all mats, right? But what you're
Right,
essentially seeing is this person's masterpiece, right? Because a mat, a canvas, is essentially what Picasso used, right? What
right.
Rembrandt used to create their
Agreed.
masterpiece. So to it, the mixed martial artist in front of you, or martial artist in front of you, is essentially painting their masterpiece as they see fit,
Oh, agreed,
right
agreed. I mean, you got
before
to
your
think
eyes.
all them years and days and months of training. That is no different. I mean, yes, it's violence, it's real life contact, but it's every bit a masterpiece. I mean, it's a theatrical chess match a lot of times. I mean, and that's why I get bummed when people get boo, the crowd boos when they're on the ground doing some grappling. You don't know how much energy that guy has already. Both guys have lost. They might be trying to rest long enough to do something, or there's some really good stuff going on right there, and you're not paying attention because a lot of people haven't studied this stuff. They don't know that, oh my God, he just put him in a normal plotter or something. They're like, why is his foot up around his neck? That's kind of weird, you know? They're like, that don't make a whole lot of sense. Then next thing you know, the guy's tapping out, you know? And he's like, well, what happened? I don't get it. Like, that's the difference, knowing the art and appreciating the art. But the casual fan that, once again, is a pro wrestler, you know, or understands that, or likes the lights and the gimmicks, well, you're bummed out by that because you're sitting there going, oh my God, this is ridiculous. They're humping each other. Come on, let's go. You know,
Or get up. That's the
yeah,
one
get
that
up.
annoys
Yeah.
me the most.
Like
Get
we
up.
didn't think of that. Like we didn't think of that. Yeah, no, that top of the morning to you. Good idea. Jeez, hold on. Why don't we get up? What are we thinking? We lost our damn minds. But no, that's it. You know, it's like they don't realize. I mean, when especially if you're outmatched, you know what I mean? Have you ever been outmatched? You know, where you're sitting there going, "Oh my God!" Like I don't know what to do. I've lost all my tools. I've tried everything. You know what I mean? This guy is better than I am. Now you're sitting there going, "Whoa!" You know, it's a roller coaster ride at this point. So you know, it's trippy. No argumento.
Yeah. No, 100%. But I mean, they don't know what they don't know, unfortunately, you know?
No, true. That's the true.
Now, obviously, you're a consummate artist, you know, professional wrestler, mixed martial artist, but also you're a musician, right? And
Yeah,
that's good to me because my dad, I mean, I grew up as a kind of street kid in Fisherman's Wharf in San Francisco, watching my dad play contemporary music, you know,
yep.
in front of tourists and what have you. So it speaks to me. So, how did you get into it? Because Everett is asking, can Big John sing? So,
Actually,
um,
he can. He can sing and he can play guitar pretty good, actually. When I was, see, once again, my main priority when I was younger wasn't 100% beating the crap out of people. I was bullied a lot as a kid. You know, I wasn't very big. I was a little guy. Um, and then I developed music. You know, my dad taught me and he showed me a couple chords. And the next thing, because he played in a band. He was in a really popular band around here called the Hometown Heroes, and they played all over the state, big fair gigs and stuff. Um, and I took off. I turned out to be a child prodigy at 14. I ended up being by 17 one of the highest ranked guitar players in New England at my age. And we made an album. We did a bunch of stuff at the time. Yeah, that's how old I am. It was an album. And we did that, and we did a bunch of touring. We did local touring, you know what I mean? Like Maine, New Hampshire, Massachusetts. We didn't go like California. We're not over in your dooryard. But so then that's where it started, and then I kept going with it because I played with professional country bands, professional rock bands. Played the club scene, played fairs, did all that stuff. I'd probably made 3 or 4 albums, CDs at this point. For that matter, we got a bunch of stuff here on YouTube from my last band called Deep Six. There's 2 or 3 songs we wrote and produced on there, and videos included and whatnot. Um, so yeah, no, that's basically I've been doing it my whole life. I'm like third generation. My great grandfather was a guitar player. My dad was a guitar player, and I'm a guitar player. And now my son's getting into it. So we got 4. So
man, each one's each one, it seems like, right?
right. Yeah, no, I actually hooked up my stuff. I might give you a quick little tune before we call it a day. I got my guitarist kicking right close by, so I might just give him a little something to make Everett happy.
Oh, yes. Oh,
So I'm
yes.
might be a quick guitar riff or something, but I'll give you something before we get
All
done.
right. All right. I love it. Love it.
Keep me
But I mean,
posted on that
as
though.
a third generation, you know, guitarist, like who, I mean, outside of your grandfather, outside of your dad, who are some of the, I mean, guitar players that have influenced you?
Well, as far as like my style, like Willie Nelson inspired a lot in me as far as playing, but I play a lot like Zach Wild, and you know I'm a lot heavier. But I have a lot of we played a lot of blues in the early days, you know, back before all the technology. So you got to realize I do have a little age on me. We didn't exactly have all this stuff that you could just dial up and you know go. So we played a lot of stuff because that's what they were, you know, is country blues from where we come from. So we did a lot of that, and then rock kind of got popular, and and it went to metal, and then you're back to rock, and you're country this week, and so I played a bunch of different styles, but
I love it. I love it. Now, I mean, in
ah,
terms of like bands and things that you're listening to, like what if I were to kind of scroll and scour through your iPod, like what am I finding?
probably Ben Sevenfold, some country, obviously. You can't get rid of that once you're into it. Like Clint Black or Garth Brooks or any of them guys, David Lee Murphy. But it's a pretty vast iPod, so a lot of the music I like I don't play either, because I do like rap, hip hop, other stuff. I don't play it though, so in the iPod might throw you off a bit. But now you find a lot of probably Avenged Sevenfold, like I say, and Black Label Society, and probably a heavier genre. But in the early days, we played Creedence Clearwater, Jimi Hendrix. We played B.B. King. We played Albert Lee. All kinds of different Rolling Stones. I mean, the list goes on for days, really. I mean, I've played in so many cover bands that I've tested all the waters at some point or another. I mean, I've gone from Metallica to BB King all in the same night. So
Oh, I love it. I mean, I'm rocking a Johnny Cash shirt myself.
there
I
you
mean,
go.
yeah. I mean, to me, he was probably the first, probably the first hip hop artist that also dabbled in country because, like, what he was saying, he was a little bit darker than the rest of the Million Dollar Quartet.
I mean, short of Elvis, I mean, Elvis was the one that really switched the gears for him. As far as making it mainstream, I think, you know what I'm saying? Like, but
yeah,
yeah,
but
you're right. Johnny Cash was
Johnny
revolutionary, though.
Cash, yeah. I mean, I would say Jerry Lee Lewis and Johnny Cash, and obviously, Jerry Lee, a lot of scandals for marrying his cousin and all that
Actually,
mess.
one of my favorite, when I started, Johnny Be Good, I remember watching Back to the Future,
Yep.
the movie. And that was my favorite moment of any guitar player at the time when I saw him do that. Is something about the riff, is something about the whole thing. And that's kind of what got me fired up to play. Was like, I was like, man, I want to play like that. And then lo and behold, I played that riff probably 5 million times now.
Hey, you know what? Sometimes, but I mean, when you talk about Chuck Berry, I mean, even his last album, right, that he recorded, "Sick," on Death's Door. You
Right?
listen to uh, Chuck, right? It's called Chuck, and the song "Big Boys," and don't tell me that he wasn't one of the greatest of all time. Don't he was top
See,
one until his
see,
40s.
that's the thing though. All the documented stuff from then ain't like now. Like everything you can rewind and watch again. Okay, like during his time, we have no clue the greatness that man really was because it had to spread thousands of miles before it even got to you. By then, he done 40 other things. So it was. So we'll never know the greatness of some of these guys that are legends. So that, when you question their legendary status, you got to put into retrospect some of this stuff, because they've done some pretty wild stuff, and you might not want to say that they didn't, like, oh, write it off like, oh, he did
Yeah.
that, or whatever Johnny Cash did. Oh yeah, no, they're making it. No, it probably happened, and it was probably crazier than the dulled down, watered down version you're getting. So I mean, there's
Yeah.
that.
Oh yeah, but I mean, again, to get that level of fame, to be when you look at a lot of these guys and girls, like I mean, Richie Valens was barely out of high school when he died. Right? He was country at like 16, 17, right? So you gotta you gotta, like, I guess context is key, right? And you have to kind of put yourself in that situation, just like a fighter, right? Like the only person that is going to know what you went through in that fight is your opponent, the person who administered all of that, punishment to you. That your coach
Right?
is not going to understand it. Ref is not going to understand it. Your significant others aren't going to understand it. Your
No,
best
and
friends
that's
aren't
the
going to
thing.
understand it. But just you two.
Right. Agreed, 100% on that. And it's a hard thing, for them all to grasp as well. You know what I mean? And some of them never do. A lot of guys end up doing this and throw caution to the wind. Don't always work out good for them. But well, anyways, man, I'm gonna give you a riff real quick on the guitar, and then I'm gonna have to call it an evening because I think my phone's getting low. So you give me a second. I'm gonna plug that in, and I'll give you something.
Let's do this. And this is a very first at According to Woods. We're literally getting a guitar kind of showcase here at According to Woods. This is a first. This is incredible. So as he gets mic'd up, definitely chime in. And again, thank you, Everett Oscar, for chiming in. Oh, some good stuff. DJ, thank you for chiming in, my man. Uh, and Steven Tatum, everything comes to light in time. Thank you for that.
All right.
All
So
right, let's do it.
let's see what we got here. All right. There you go, man.
Oh, damn right, my man. And for those who haven't already followed you on social media, where can they find you, my man?
Usually you can hunt me down on Facebook. I have a Twitter somewhere, but I don't remember it. So if you find it, hit me up. I'm sure I'll never find it, so I don't know what to tell you on that. But yeah, usually Facebook. We got a bunch of stuff. I also started an RC company with my buddy. It's called Nitemare RCs and Garages. And so we're doing that stuff, so you can find us on there too if you happen to stroll across that. So, but Facebook, we're pretty much, I'm pretty easy man to find.
Damn right. And before we go, obviously there's been a ton of people that have helped you along the way, in your journey in life, in fight, and everything that you do. So let's
Yep.
get some shout outs out of the way, my man.
Yeah. As far as the fight world, I'd like to thank Chris Young, Eduardo Benjamin, my buddy Sal, Chris Harrison, uh, Chris Sorrow, Jeremiah Doucette, Jake Mathiasen, um, Hopkins Point Lobster Company. They always have my back. Uh, yes, the list goes on for days. Marcus Davis, Ray Wood from Bellator, Ryan Sanders, guys I rolled with, Bruce Boynton. He's a big name that should be happening right now. Just a lot of people, man, and they all help you along the way at some point. Even the guy that might have just give you a ride. So I give a shout out to all of you. Everybody's helped me. Brandon Russell, my boy Jacob Cameron up here. He's a hell of a fighter. One of Team Nightmare's originals. And of course, my family and everybody else that supports on a regular basis. They deserve all the credit. You know what I'm saying? And all my friends that supported me along the way. There's so many of them, man. You ain't got enough time. But no, I appreciate it from them guys.
Damn right. Well, thank you all for joining us here at According to Woods. But for John Parker, I'm According to Woods, and if you haven't already done so, consider sharing, and subscribing to the According to Woods YouTube and Facebook pages. We greatly appreciate it here, and we bid you adieu. John, thank you so much.
Rock and roll, man. Thanks for having me.
No worries, and we are